So this is an example of one of the KPIs, that we can put on the top of the dashboard, right? And we can completely create this within the features that, the built-in features that Power BI has, right? I'll quickly show you. So this is dummy data. I'll quickly show you how we did this and how to get all this colors and formatting and stuff, right? So with the reference labels aligned below the main label on the KPI, right? So that is one piece. And the second one is using Figma, right? So this is the visual and that's the background. So the background is created in Figma. So this is just an example. So this is not really a dashboard's background. So this is a trading charts background, right? So I'll just quickly show that as well. For now, I'll just show what the data is. The data is pretty simple. It's just some 10 rows of this one. So this is the data I have for the first visual, right? The KPI cards visual, right? So it's just 10 rows of data, right? I have created multiple measures based on the 10 rows of data. So this is the data, metric ID and value. This is what we had here, right? So I had created multiple KPIs, right, to get that data into different columns and to use it on the visuals. So say for example, if you want to look at positions opened, so that was the first row here, right? Position open was 108, right? So here it's just positions opened is just calculating the sum of the value column for filtering it for metric ID 1. It's pretty simple. So that's the calculation. Similarly, I have it for others as well. So candidate is row number 8. Conversion rate is row number 9, and so on and so forth, right? So we have how many positions were open, what was the vacancy rate, what was the vacancy rate last year, how many days we took to fill this year, how many days we took to fill the vacancies last year, what are the position, how many number of positions are filled compared to last year, how many candidates were uh, 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 having through the process, and what is the conversion rate this year and last year, right? So now coming back, so all of them are into individual KPIs here, right? Like I said. So there are some other calculations as well, which is basically if you look at the days to fill variation, it's between this year and the last year. It's a subtraction of these two, and so on and so forth. So you have this variation that's between vacancy rate and vacancy rate last year, so on and so forth, right? There's a target for the vacancy rate that I wanted to show. So that's like 8%, right? And yeah, so that is pretty much the KPIs column that you see here, right? And in order to create these visuals, I had to add some more details, right? I had to add some colors and icons as well. So dark green is just the hex code of it, dark red, light green, and light red. So dark green and dark red are for the font text here, right? This ones, right? And the light green and light red are for the backgrounds, right? So then moving on to the icons, you have the arrow up and arrow down icons that you can see here. So I've also added them as unique character codes, that is there in HTML, right? So that once the code is given, it will display this arrow, right? So those are the constants that I've added, and there are some other formatting measures I did. We'll look into that later, right? So for now, quickly, so this was the older card visual here, right? This is the newer card visual. Want me to click on this? There are some interesting features in this one. So if you just go ahead and add uh, sessions opened, right? Candidates and days to fill, right? So this is a multi-row sort of a card visual where you can show multiple things, right? And so the interesting thing here is you can control all of them simultaneously. So typically the KPI racks come in one single rack, right? All the KPI fields. And so you want all of them to look unique. Sorry, not unique, same, right? So you can format them together if you want to. You can also separately format them wherever needed. So that is the interesting piece of this new card thing, right? Let me just do a rounded rectangle, make it 10%. Add a shape. In layout, you can do multiple things. You can arrange them single column, single row, or in grid with the rows and columns, right? For now, I keep it single rows. Now this is the interesting one. Inside. Oh, okay. So this is this call out label and value that you guys know. I'll just move on to the reference one. So the reference label is interesting, right? Whatever you want to show the metrics that has to be seen in relation to the main metric, right? So 108 positions open. That's a 8.5% vacancy rate of the total positions available, right? And this was 7.2% last year, and now it has been up 1%, right? And the target is to have the vacancy rate at 8%, but we have not met that. It's over 8%, so it's a negative thing. All this has to be seen in relation to this one, right? So all this can be put into the so-called reference label section, right? You can choose which one to do it for. First, I'll choose the positions opened series. And in that, I'll add the vacancy rate, right? And that will start showing up below. I'll add the vacancy rate last year. I'll add the vacancy rate target text. So this is the below 8%. So basically I had added the 8% with the text below, right? That's all. So you have these things, and similarly, I'll just do it quickly for the other ones as well. Here it will be conversion rate last year, sorry, conversion rate and conversion rate last year, right? And moving on to the last one, that will be the days to fill last year. Done, right? So just to quickly get rid of the final look of it, the background can be turned off for the reference area, right? And the divider as well can be taken off. We can do this for all of them, right? And right. So now quick changes. So whatever we have here, they're showing the field names, right? Vacancy rate target, but it doesn't look good. I know because that's the name here that they've given. So we can also edit that for each of the labels. So when you go into reference labels, you have to choose the label to edit, right? So currently I'm choosing position open series. I'm choosing vacancy rate last year, this label, and I'm going to edit it to make sure it reads last year, right? And the last one to read target. All right then. So same with the other ones as well. We can do that. I don't want to repeat it. Right now, let's move on to the value part of it. Right. Let's make sure uh, some quick changes to make sure it looks like the above one. Right. I typically use the bold font to make sure it looks like the above one, and you can edit all of them together as well instead of doing it here. So you can just do this, and you can do all the titles as UI semi bold, right? And let's make sure they're a little bit gray in color, right? So that it doesn't interfere with it. And call out values as well. Let's quickly make it semi bold and probably 30 and 0. Right, let's closer to the above one, and this has to be a little bit bigger. All right, cool. So now finally, let's get to the additional part here. So, wherever we want to show the detail for the reference label, right? So if you go to reference labels and choose for which reference label you want to show the detail, I'll first go to positions opened, and I'll go to the last year value, which is 7.2%. And in that, I can go to detail. And in that detail, I can basically add the variation, right? So this is the vacancy rate this year, last year is 7.2. So the variation is this, right? That's a 1.3, right? So now I have to format it. Right? To format it, I have three things to format. One is to add that arrow, and the second one is the font color, and the third one is the background color. Right? Along with adding the arrow, I can also do the formatting of the percentage, right? So I have created three measures for it. One is the vacancy rate text formatting, right, which is this. It basically does it as a percentage here. And then if it is less than 0, it adds the arrow down symbol. If it is more than 0, it adds the plus and the arrow up symbol. That's what I've done. Right. So, and for the font color, it's basically, if it's greater than 0, the dark red, or else dark green, right? Because it's a vacancy rate. So more than 0 is bad, right? And for the background color, same, light red, light green, right? So now let's apply these three things here. So in this, let's go to font color. Let's make sure we apply this. And this is the display formatting, right? Make it custom, and I will add the code as well. Right, done. So once you're done with all these three, you get this, right? And I'd also done a small target result calculation. If the vacancy rate is more than the target, then show a negative symbol or a positive symbol, right? I could have also done this with the Unicode thing and pulled it here, but I just want to show two ways to do it, right? So we can also add that as a detail here for the target label, which is target label, and we'll add this as the detail. So that shows up, right? And so once you're done with that, so I'll do the similar thing for this one as well. I don't want to repeat it. Right now, we'll just go on to the icons, right? So the after the reference label, so we have seen shape, layout, call out values, and reference labels. So moving on to the images, you can select which series to apply the image to, and I'll just quickly browse it. Right, make sure it is smaller, right? And I'll do this for the other ones as well. Right. So once we're done with that, let's change to all of the series and let's move the image to the left. Right. And let's also increase the space between the image and the text. Right. So that is pretty much it. Right. So this is how you can create a more, so like typically how we used to show this is we'll show this as one KPI card, we'll show this 8% as another KPI card, right? And we might show this text, below it and stuff like that. This is more at one place, and it's more nice to look at, I felt, right? So that is how you create this. And let me delete it. So there's also one more, the Figma background thing, right? So typically in Figma, it just took me 5 minutes to create this, right? So I had just, these things. It's an image, Tesla logo. I have 3 text boxes. Okay. Tesla Incorporation, Follow Plus, and Connect Wallet. I have 3 rectangles, one for the gray, one for the blue, one for the black, and I've added some gradient for the black. Right, that's all I've done. And when I export it, I just go to make sure I export it as SVG here, right? And then I click on export this file name Power BI Figma, right? And it'll just quickly save it as a SVG file that you can open in a browser, right? We can also import it to Tableau or Power BI, right? So when you come to Power BI, you typically go to this here, go to canvas background, browse that image, right? Location, right? So that's the SVG file. So once you do that, it won't show up. You might have to reduce the transparency to make it show up. So now that's the background, right? So typically you can then start placing all your visuals from the data here. So that's what I had done. The moment you start adding visuals, this thing will go off, the build visuals data will go off, right? So I've just added the close rate job. Okay, so I've just added the close rate that you can see here for the Tesla. Date and close alone, I've just added, and I made sure I faded off the background, and we can just see what it means like. Right. So this way, when we use Figma, not necessarily just to create mockups, right, but also to create some backgrounds that we can use for the dashboards, right? It might look more professional and more contemporary, is what I thought. Now for this one, So here I have created a Figma model SVG and then I have imported it here. But so here I had an image that I've taken from somewhere to just show you how it looks like when we incorporate an image instead of an SVG file, right? So I'll just go here, go to canvas background, and I'll import that image, right? Mm, so there comes the image, right? And you can just adjust it to fill it. So necessarily you have to create the image at such a resolution, sorry, not resolution, the size that you have planned for the dashboard, right? Just the layout alone. And later you can come here and then place the visuals on top of it, right? And let's make sure we turn off the border and the background so that it looks like it fits on this one, right? So here we can also place buttons from here to jump to another sheet, right? I've not used the KPI here, but this should be an important KPI because it looks like it's standing out even though it's on the right side. But stuff like this, so we can use buttons to jump to the other locations. The UI will show the buttons because we can customize it easily more in Figma than you can customize it in Power BI. And you can see the clarity of the image, right? It's not great, the background image. If you import it as an image, it's not great. But look at this one. This is good, right? It does not break, but here it breaks. So you make sure you import it in SVG. So that's pretty much what I had to show.
Sina, I have a generic question, like what exactly is Figma anyways?
Okay, Figma is a prototyping tool, right? So typically when people develop softwares, they want to manage the UI aspect of it, how it will look like to the user, right? And they want to design that user interactions and user experience, right? So that then when the software is developed, the development team can create those pieces on the UI and make sure it looks like what we envisioned it, right? So Figma is a tool where you can create that UI. It takes, so it has all the tools that you want to create. Say for example, it has this rectangle, line, arrow, blah blah blah, right? You have frames where you can group, you can move together, you can replicate, all that stuff, right? So if I want this replicated, right, I can do this, right, and move it away. So I can make sure I place another stock information there and so on and so forth, right? And you can also add interactivity. Say for example, so this is one frame that I have here. It's called Power BI frame. I can add another frame, right? And I can add link between this frame to that frame. Say for example, when I click on follow plus, it'll jump from here to that frame. So it'll actually look like as if you're using an app, but the backend functionality is not there. Only the front end is there, and it'll show the interactions. You can interact with it. That's what Figma is majorly developed for. It's for UI UX design, right? But we can also use it to create nice visuals, which we can uh, upload to Tableau or Power BI as backgrounds, or we can also create mockups for the dashboards in Figma. The interactivity part might not be that much on as far as dashboards are concerned, but it'll definitely help you um, showcase the idea in a better way compared to making that mockup in a PowerPoint or Excel, right? So there's also some stuff here. So if you want to just make a mock-up for a dashboard in Figma, and if you start from scratch using the rectangle and triangle, etc., it'll take a lot of time, right? But we can create components in Figma. They're called as assets. We can create them to look like whatever tool we're using. Say if you're using Tableau, then we can create all the components that we use on a Tableau dashboard. We can create them in Figma and store them as assets. Then the next time you don't have to start from a rectangle or a triangle. You can just go to assets here and you can just drag and drop those assets and it'll just fall into the canvas. And within a matter of a few minutes, you can create a good looking dashboard mockup, right? So that is how Figma can help as far as mockup for dashboards are concerned.
Yep. Actually, you may be aware that some triple IT Hyderabad interns are working on the computer vision project. So they have actually proposed that they will use this Figma for coming up with the prototype of UI for Android.
Okay.
So I guess it makes sense then now. Like this is primarily for that only, like coming up with the mock-up of UI.
Yeah, yeah.
Sina, can you once go to the Power BI file, please? It had a dark code. Yeah, the text vacancy rate variation. Can you just click on that? The measure.
Okay. Text vacancy rate variation.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just wanted to know the code you have used for the formatting part.
So the formatted rate is just the percentage that we are showing here, right? It's has no decimals, it's a percentage. I'm just adding a blank and I'm adding the arrow down character Unicode if it is less than 0. If it is more than 0, I make sure I add a plus because negative numbers show up with a negative sign by default, but positive numbers don't. And this is variation, so plus or minus is needed. So I've added just the plus alone and I have put the arrow up.
Okay, understood. Okay, and the arrow up and arrow down are Unicodes. So you can
Yes.
just
It's
add images as well.
I've not tried adding images. I've only used Unicodes throughout here. So
Okay.
this character that you see here is also a Unicode only because it can be copied and pasted. This one, right? It's like a text. You can select it and copy paste it. It's not an image.
Okay.
So I've only used Unicode characters for throughout this dashboarding.
Okay, understood. Thanks.